We are officially in draft season, and today I wanted to talk about the Packers draft types. Basically, the certain traits that they look for in specific positions, but also in every single player that they draft. And some of these types are dependent on the coaching staff in place, but some of them have been held by the Packers front office for a long, long time. So I wanted to look at those types, and specifically with two positions that I think are the Packers' strongest needs. Look at what they have done in the past at those positions, and then look at prospects in this year's draft to see what prospects best match those. So let's get started with the wide receiver position. Now, this one I would say is the type that the Packers have held in value for the longest amount of time here, and they stay very consistent with it. And that is tall, physical players, big bodies. All right. I look at MVS and EQ in the 2018 draft, and then also Christian Watson in the past year's draft in the second round. Big bodies there, and MVS and EQ are no longer with the team, but all three of those guys, just big body wide receivers, physical guys, and the Packers aren't really looking for speed. That's a compliment to what they would be looking for in a wide receiver, but mostly they're going to be looking first at these big body guys. Amari Rodgers and Randall Cobb are the two outliers to this that I can think of. With Rodgers, they were chasing this Tyler Ervin role, if you will, going back all the way to 2019. They saw what a versatile guy can do in Matt LaFleur's offense, playing in both the running and passing game. And Rodgers obviously didn't work out too well in that. And then Randall Cobb was just a great player at Kentucky and proved to be one in the pros. Now, the thing that those two guys have might not be tall physical bodies, but they both were good run blockers. And that is another thing that, especially with Matt LaFleur, they have valued quite a bit. You look at three guys I mentioned earlier with EQ, MVS, Christian Watson, and then you throw Rodgers, Cobb into that category, and then also Romeo Doubs from last year. Run blockers are highly valued in the Matt LaFleur offense. Not only in the drafts, but also in free agency. Look no further than Sammy Watkins and Devin Funchess. Those two weren't the hottest free agent wide receivers around at their time, but they were great in the run game. So they're going to value that. The fit that I think is strongest this year, the prospect that I think matches that description the best, is Quentin Johnston from TCU. 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver, so clearly fits that big body description. Very physical guy, but also has a little bit of speed on him, so he is a bit of a deep threat. He mostly played on the outside for TCU, so I just think he would be an incredible complement to Christian Watson. Two guys who can pretty much do it all, especially Watson, such a great route runner. So I would not be surprised if the Packers took Johnston with that 15th overall pick. Now, moving on to offensive tackle. This is the one that the Packers have also stayed very consistent with over the years. And not only offensive tackle, but also offensive linemen in general. Number one thing, and this is another thing that they already valued, but especially with Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff, have valued even more. And that is versatility and also an athlete for their offensive linemen. One thing that they have consistently done is drafting guys that have played tackle in college but are kind of too small for that position in the pros. You look at Royce Newman and John Runyon, and those guys are very versatile, have the experience, have the knowledge to play offensive tackle, but are probably better fit at guard, but, can slide over to tackle if needed. And we've seen that versatility with Runyon. They tried it with Newman, and he just wasn't quite ready with that. Both those guys are versatile, and two guys that are also very versatile that they have drafted in the past few years is Elton Jenkins and Zach Tom. And the main similarity between all four of these players that I just mentioned is their athletic abilities. They have very high relative athletic scores, which, if you're unfamiliar with, is basically just a calculation that takes into consideration a player's height, weight, all their measurements at the combine to produce a number 0 through 10. And, the average for players is somewhere between the 5 to 8 range, but the best of the best are going to be from 9 to 10. Very rare to see a perfect score, but all four of these offensive linemen have very high scores for their position. Royce Newman with an 8.72, John Runyon with 8.45, Elton with 9.57, and Zach Tom with 9.59. You know, Zach Tom and Elton Jenkins out of college were touted as these highly versatile players. Both Zach and Elton, I'm sure, played almost every single position on the line in college. I know Elton did for sure. So versatility is something they value. And I think the player that fits that description perfectly this year is Peter Skronsky. They also recently have valued offensive linemen from the Big Ten. So just gritty guys, and Peter Skronsky is that. Skronsky is an all-around athlete, scoring a 9.28 on the relative athletic score, 5.16 40, which isn't all too impressive, but a 34.5 vertical at 6'4" and 313 pounds. The main concern for him, you know, he did play a lot of offensive tackle at Northwestern, but the big concern for him is similar to Royce Newman. His arms are too short. He's got a little bit of dinosaur arms, if you will, all right? So because of that, a lot of people think that he will mainly play guard in the NFL. But once again, just a big guy, but is also very athletic. So would be a perfect fit for the Packers. He could go a little bit before them in the draft, but I would not be shocked if they took him at pick number 15. Now, speaking of pick number 15, they also have a specific type when it comes to their first round players. And these players are usually, once again, athletes, but also, you know, projects. You know, they are mainly drafting off of athletic skills with the first round picks. Maybe taking a little bit of a gamble on some of these players that did not have incredible production in their college years, but they just think are just great athletes that they think they could develop into great players. And one thing that is really interesting, I hate to beat the dead horse on the RAS as many people do, but their past few first round draft picks in their relative athletic scores. You have Devontae White, obviously, who is just a massive man, but ran a 4.7740, RAS of 9.56, Quay Walker 9.63, Eric Stokes 9.38, very fast cornerback, and then Rashawn Gary, one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen come out of college, a 9.95 relative athletic score. That man is not small, but just a phenomenal player out of Michigan. And you know, when they first drafted Rashawn Gary back in 2019, they got a lot of criticism, as they always do in the draft, because the haters just can't stand Brian Gutekunst in any of his decisions. But a lot of people pointed to, you know, Brian Burns is still on the board, and Brian Burns has turned out to be a great player too. But they have developed Rashawn and Gary into a very great technical outside linebacker for them. You know, the other three are mysteries up to this point, but they love their projects, all right? And the guy that I think they might take a chance on this year is tight end Darnell Washington from Georgia, who has 9.88 relative athletic score at 6'6" and 264 pounds. And he does fit another type of the Packers, especially at tight end and wide receiver that I mentioned earlier, and that it is his ability in the blocking game. Could easily step in to replace the very big shoes of Mercedes Lewis, big dog. I think he could be a red zone target as well, and the Packers desperately need a new tight end on this team. So that is all I have today on the Packers draft types. Let me know in the comments below if you think I missed any players that fit these types as well. But other than that, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers here, so we'd appreciate it if you help us out in that. And I'll talk to you later. As always, go Pack Go.